appreciate that, but I think it's time that he gets a taste of something else because...
Go now.
When criminals face justice in court, emotions can run high. But what happens when they turn violent and attack the judge? This shocking behavior is more common than you think. Convicts have lashed out at judges, putting everyone in the courtroom at risk. But why do they resort to such extreme behavior? Sidney Newsom's court appearance took a dramatic turn. He was facing a domestic violence charge in Pike County Justice Court, Mississippi. During his hearing, he was presided over by Southern District Judge Aubrey Rimes. He initially appeared calm and composed while reviewing some paperwork. However, his demeanor changed after an altercation with a court officer. The situation quickly escalated as Newsom engaged in a heated argument with Judge Rimes. In response, the judge directed the officer to remove Newsom from the courtroom. As he was being led out, his frustration boiled over. He violently threw a stack of papers and later a telephone at the judge. Despite the officer's attempts to subdue him, he managed to overpower the officer momentarily. The judge then took matters into his own hands, single-handedly pinning Newsom to a table until additional backup arrived. Newsom was eventually restrained and removed from the courtroom. Following these outbursts, he faced additional charges for contempt of court. He was subsequently sentenced to 48 hours in prison, adding to the legal consequences of his initial domestic violence charge. The Joseph Zeeler case is a chilling example of a cold case solved decades after the crime occurred. Thanks to advancements in DNA technology, in 1990, the brutal murders of 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter, 32-year-old Lisa Story, shocked the community of Cape Coral, Florida.
Zeeler was actually arrested for another crime, and that's how detectives were able to get his fingerprints and DNA samples. His sample was put into a database called CODIS, and that database also stores unknown DNA samples, including those from the Cornell Story case. Now, when the system ran, that's when detectives got a hit linking Zeeler to this 26-year-old murder case.
More than 30 years after the brutal rape and murder of an 11-year-old and her babysitter in their Cape Coral home, their families finally feel some relief. Today, a judge sentenced their killer to death as the jury recommended.
The two victims were found in Robin's home, both having been suffocated and assaulted. Despite extensive investigations at the time, no suspects were identified, and the case went cold for more than 26 years. In 2016, a breakthrough came when Joseph Zeeler's DNA collected from an unrelated arrest matched evidence found at the crime scene. This match allowed authorities to arrest him on charges of murder and assault. He was a former Cape Coral resident, which linked him to the area. The trial began in 2023, and he was ultimately found guilty of both murders. His sentencing phase was notable not only for the weight of the crime, but also for his erratic behavior in court. He leaned towards his defense attorney, Kevin Shirley, whispered briefly, and suddenly elbowed him in the face. Court bailiffs quickly subdued him.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
I'm relaxed. Don't cough. Relax.
I used to box. I've taken a lot better shots than that.
Despite the outburst, the hearing continued, and he was sentenced to death. Later, he returned to the courtroom, flashing the word killer across his teeth, further highlighting his unpredictable behavior. He was sentenced to death in June 2023. The Daniel Stewart Berry case involves a robbery and assault incident.
Stewart Berry was arrested last night after trying to rob a store in Union County. At least that's the accusation against him. Sheriff Jimmy Edwards says Berry also assaulted a female jailer last night while she was trying to give him his meal. The sheriff adds that he believes Berry was under the influence.
Berry was a University of Mississippi student. In February 2017, he was arrested for robbing a store in Union County, Mississippi. He was reportedly jumped over a counter, put a store clerk in a headlock, and took $20 from the cash register. While being escorted to court, Barry became violent and headbutted a deputy, breaking the officer's nose. This attack, which was caught on surveillance cameras, occurred as he yelled obscenities at the authorities. The situation was compounded by his earlier behavior in jail, where he had tried to assault another officer during meal service. Authorities suspected Barry was under the influence of gravel.
I don't know what this is or how much he's taken or whatever, but we'll have to get him evaluated by a doctor, but we've got to determine a safe way to do it for the doctor and for him and for us.
As a result of the assault and the original robbery charge, Barry faced additional counts. His bond was set at $200,000. The Bass Webb case is one of the most notorious criminal cases. Bria Runarich was 32 years old. She was murdered by her ex-boyfriend, Bass Webb, in July 2009. Runarich was studying to become a law enforcement officer. She had recently ended her relationship with Webb due to his jealousy. He brutally beheaded her in her home in Cynthia, Kentucky. Her 2 young daughters were in the house during the murder, but were unharmed. Immediately after killing Bria, Webb drove to the Bourbon County Jail, where he attempted to run over 2 prison guards in a parking lot. He was charged with attempted murder for this attack, which added to his growing list of violent crimes. Webb was later convicted for the 2003 murder of another girlfriend, Sabrina Vaughn. She had been missing since that year, and her skeletal remains were discovered in a shallow grave in 2010. It was revealed that Webb had choked Vaughn to death and buried her body. His courtroom behavior was erratic and aggressive. During one of his hearings, he spat at the judge and prison guards.
Yes.
Yes.
There's no way I'm going to try this case or have any further proceedings, or I'll have to see you for one further second. Set for the mayor hearing next week.
At another point, Webb was seen in court with a tattoo on his skull that listed individuals he wanted to kill, including judges, police officers, and media personnel. In September 2012, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder of Bria Runarich. In 2017, he was also convicted for the murder of Sabrina Vaughn. With multiple other charges, he's currently serving his sentence at the Kentucky State Penitentiary. The Melissa Hardwick case gained significant attention due to her outburst. She was facing domestic violence charges related to an alleged incident involving her husband. The case was brought to the Wayne County Circuit Court in Monticello, Kentucky. During the hearing, Hardwick's husband was set to testify against her. There were multiple interruptions from Hardwick, including the use of inappropriate language.
Your statements in your petition as part of your testimony, but I need you to tell me briefly, in your own words, what happened to cause you to ask for a domestic violence order.
Yes, Your Honor. Things have been escalating, I guess, since the first of the year, and Melissa's had a couple of MIWs and a couple arrests, and she got out of jail in, I guess, April, and she started, we hadn't really had anything personal up until that point. She got out of jail in April.
Despite warnings from the presiding judge to stop, Hardwick continued her disruptions.
My personal life is
No.
your business, John. It has nothing to do with
Miss
you
Hardwick?
boys. No.
You will be held in contempt of this court if you become
I
disruptive.
don't care. I haven't done anything to this court. I haven't done anything to him.
She will be arrested for contempt of the court.
It doesn't make any difference.
You will serve 10 days for contempt of court.
Prompting the judge to hold her in contempt of court and sentence her to 10 days in jail. Upon hearing the sentence, Hardwick's behavior escalated. She attempted to jump over the courtroom barrier and physically attack the judge.
Go now.
Court officers intervened and restrained her before she could reach the judge, but her outburst had severe consequences. Following the attempted assault, the initial contempt sentence of 10 days was extended to 120 days. Hardwick was also charged with terroristic threatening and intimidation, adding to her legal woes.
Get off of me!
Stand back.
Wait and see. Get my bracelet off of me.
Are you interested in watching the reaction of school shooters to life sentences? Then make sure to visit our channel for more interesting videos like this.